Welcome back to another episode of the Collaborative IEP podcast. I'm Ashley Barlow, your host, and I am so happy you are here. Okay, we are going to continue in this discussion about Orton Gillingham nitty gritty. And today, what we're going to do, as promised, is we are going to look at UFLI, University of Florida Literacy Institute. UFLI. It's an acronym. It also, I'm sure, means that you can fly, as in soar, as in succeed in reading. I'm sure it's a play on words. If it isn't, it is. And, something that I love, by the way, is like a state of being. This applies to special education. So when you're learning how to be a teacher, you learn categorize the behavior, not the child. This is like a big tangent, by the way. We're coming back to UFLI. And so you say, like, basically the behavior was bad, not the human is bad, like you're bad, right? And so, like, I oftentimes say your body is feeling busy. That's not you, that's your body. Like, that's a praxic. So, but like, you are busy, the state of being, therefore means so much to me. Like, the state of when people talk about a state of being with like a to be verb is you are, I am, you were, present tense, past tense. When you talk about state of being, there's an adjective at the end. You are happy. You are content. I think that's one of the things that having Jack Barlow and working with this population of humans that either are or love somebody that has some sort of disability. You either are disabled, that's where that state of being word came in. It is, it like strips stuff down to the most like simplistic things of humanity. And I love it. So like sometimes state of being is so cool. Like you are worthy. You are belonging. You are beautiful. You are wanted. Those things are like, yeah, like I used to say to Jack when he was little and he would just have these like really hard days. I would say, we have good days and bad days, and you are so, so loved. Because at the end of the day, like I think we all just want to be loved. And, but yet it can also be so hard. Like you are loud. Are you always loud? I don't know. I don't know. But you're always loved. You are busy. He's not always busy. So like your body is being busy right now, or like your body right now, right? Like your body can be busy. Your body sometimes acts busy or something like that, but it's not like the state of being. So anyway, I am your host, and that was a long welcome. 3 minutes and 32 seconds if you're counting. Uh, Before we dive into UFly, what we're going to do today is I have pulled up on my other screen lesson planning and implementation support. The lesson plan for the first 2 days is what we're going to go through in UFly today. And again, in these episodes, my goal is to get you like this some specific questions to ask and some specific knowledge about what UFly instruction looks like, such that, or in Gillingham, we're doing it through the lens of UFly because I think that is something that's become very popular, largely because it's free and it's pretty good, in my opinion. And so my goal is to get you like some of the nitty gritty so that you can tell whether or not your child or your student or your friend or your next door neighbor is getting Orton Gillingham instruction that is basically implemented with fidelity or implemented the way it's supposed to be implemented. So in the last episode, we talked about those 5 components of OG, and I kind of gave you some lens. Now we're going to get into the nitty gritty of what UFly looks like. And again, like overarching asterisk fine print is that UFLI does not yet, I'm going to say yet, have the stamp of approval of corporate Orton Gillingham to say, yes, we will say this is OG. And it is my opinion, colloquially, that in short, that it most likely will. It just hasn't existed long enough that there's enough body of research, enough evidence to say it's an evidence and research-based practice. Okay. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's happening over at the membership, because we are on like a year-long journey to take the membership to the next level, and I'm really excited to tell you about it. So the membership up until now has housed the lab, which you can buy separately. The lab is my nuts and bolts IEPs 101 course intended mainly for parents or other people that go to IEP meetings. Kind of goes start to finish in special education advocacy. It also houses the IEP binder, which you can buy no place else. The IEP binder is guides, checklists, and communication templates to be used in special education advocacy. And we're coming up on a point where I feel like the IEP binder's almost finished. And so one of the plans for the club is to, which is called the membership now, we used to call it club, membership, is I want to finish the IEP binder and I want to be able to give it to you in a bound form so that you can like have one PDF, you can print it off, you can get it bound. I might even add that to the membership where like you get a mailed copy of it. Something I'm looking into. But I want for you to have something that's like, this is my IEP. This is my list of forms, checklists, and guide. Another thing I want is I want for every topic to pretty much have a guide to it and then a checklist for how to do it, and then communication templates around that. So, for example, we might be talking about eligibility. And so I want to have a guide for eligibility. And then I want to have checklists for your eligibility meeting. And then I want to have communication templates about what you should communicate before an eligibility meeting, after an eligibility meeting, if it goes well, if it doesn't go well, if you want to set the foundation to establish eligibility, those kinds of things, so that you've got like a copy and paste, so to speak. Right now we have lots of forms, lots of checklists, lots of guides, but I want to kind of like close the loops on all of those so that it's like this really comprehensive thing. So the IEP binder is hopefully going to be finished within a year's time and be able to be printed into something that goes into a binder or a spiraled notebook or a bound something or another. Then the club also houses other PDF downloads. So those might be, guides, checklists, and communication templates that are outside of the IEP binder. So basically, I'm educating you on other things like, executive functioning or coping skills or whatever. And those are honestly starting to get a little bit overwhelming in volume. So I'm going through the process of reorganizing them and figuring out basically like what else are the other big topics that we've not yet hit, and how do we finish it in such a way that then those PDF drops are just happening when like a trend is happening, right? So like maybe right now a trend would be how to do policy advocacy, so maybe I need to do like a telephone script for I'm calling about this issue and I'm a parent of a child with a disability and this is why I care about this issue. But it would only be like hot topics that get dropped so that we aren't overwhelming you with volume. So another thing that the membership houses is the IEP Guru Academy stuff, which is also available out on the open market. We might take those off the open market and only make them available inside the membership. There's a couple of reasons behind that, but we certainly want to build those videos because that is becoming very quickly the most consumed product that is within the membership. And then most importantly, we are going to start to add more community things. So basically what I have learned is that and what I thought would happen and just has organically is that memberships start usually as like content houses. So lots and lots of information. And then eventually the information kind of like levels out. You don't need as much information. You're just kind of keeping up with the times and you're ready to develop community. And so that's where we are. When we started the membership, we tried to add a bunch of community and we overwhelmed people. But now our current members are like, yeah, I feel pretty good. Like I'm pretty ready. So we're starting off with member spotlights. And we have 2 scheduled, one for September and one for October. And we've got members, like real live humans, that are going to come in and talk to us about their successes and what tools they used from within the membership that helped them and how their kids and their clients and their students are doing as a result of that good work that's happening and how they carried a collaborative spirit through it and all of that stuff so that you're learning from each other and so that I'm learning from you and so that we can all kind of weigh in. So we're starting with those. And then I'm going to do some exclusive trainings. So whether it's me or guest speakers, largely guest speakers, I'm going to have people come in and do little mini trainings and then do large question and answer discussions for you so that, we're really kind of like tuning into exactly what you need and meeting you where you are. So lots of behaviorists, lots of OTs, lots of professionals that can come in and help us and brainstorm with us. So I'm super excited about where the membership's going. Rachel and I have a big, like I call them dumps. She calls them power hours, where we're just going to kind of like brainstorm. And then once I get through busy season, which should be starting to calm down like by October 15th, then I'm going to dive in and get started. I might need one of my trips. If you've been here long enough, sometimes I go to Key West and I just, because my mom and dad have a house there and I just like bang it out like 18-hour days where I just work, and I accomplish big stuff for you guys. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you. And now 12 minutes in and we still haven't gotten to the topic. So if you're like me, you fast forwarded and alert, we're ready to get moving. Let's take a quick break for our first little commercial. Hi, friends. It's Ashley, and I wanted to let you in on something that can seriously change the game when it comes to your IEP advocacy. It's called the Collaborative IEP Membership. Sometimes we call it ABC Club. And it's packed with resources to make your IEP meetings easier, less stressful, and way more effective. Here's what you get. My complete IEP binder. This baby includes monthly drops of communication templates, guides, and checklists to keep you organized and on top of things. Access to our full inclusion workshop, behavior workshop, and negotiation workshops. These are deep dives that give you real strategies you can actually use. And with the membership, you get all of our IEP Guru Academy videos. Short, practical videos that will answer the exact questions you're asking right now. Every month, we'll also drop new content like how to navigate PDA with your neurodivergent child, or exactly how to ask for Orton Gillingham reading instruction, so you're never left guessing. The membership is $29 a month or $297 for the entire year, and you can try it risk-free with a 3-day trial. Head over to the website, thecollaborativeiep.com/membership, and join us today. Let's make your next IEP meeting your best one yet. If you are still listening after 13 minutes, welcome back. And we're going to look at this document called UFLI Foundations, Lesson Planning and Implementation Support. Of course, I'll drop this in the show notes. Basically, this is a 2-day lesson plan. Remember how when we talked about the sequential nature of Orton Gillingham instruction and the like scope and sequence, we talked about how you go through a scope and sequence, but then we also talked about how the instruction is explicit. And So what explicit means is that you know what you're doing and it's very deliberate, right? So Orton Gillingham products, let's just assume with that asterisk that we talked about a few minutes ago, let's just assume that UFLI is OG, okay? Which, see back to the asterisk, it's not technically, but it's popular and it's, in my opinion, professional opinion, it's close enough. I will say it this way. I have never had a client whose team has suggested UFLI and I have said, terrible, horrible, no good, very bad idea. Okay. So what's it look like? So I'm going to walk you through what day one looks like. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about how it ties into those 5 to 7 components of what good Orton Gillingham instruction looked like. So on day one, teachers are supposed to start with phonemic awareness. Then they're supposed to do a visual drill. Then step 3 is an auditory drill. Then step 4 is a blending drill. Then step 5 is the teaching of a new concept. And each of those has a time amount next to them. And the total time for that lesson is 30 minutes. Now, the first thing to tell you is this is for tier 1 instruction. Tier 1 means whole group. This is not the lesson plan for intervention, but I suspect that this lesson plan is similar to the one for OG as intervention, because I'm pretty certain that at the K to 3 levels, the fidelity standard is 30 minutes for intervention as well. It's just, more tailored to the individual student and in a smaller group. Okay, so let's go back to what the phonemic awareness drill looks like. So it has 2 different components to it. It has a blending component and it has a segmenting component. I'm going to read to you what it says about blending. So it says teachers segments or breaks apart a word into phonemes. And the example it gives is sh, ah, shop. Students chorally, all together, blend the phonemes to form the word shop. And this is a warm-up for decoding or reading. So in other words, the teacher says, listen to the word sh, ah, and then the students say shop. And then the teacher moves on, fish. And then the kids say fish. And then one more, the teacher says ship. And then the kids all say ship. When, I'm trained in IMSE, Institute of Multisensory Instruction. In IMSE, if I go into, I'm just going to go into the kindergarten book and I'm in concept 13, which is the phoneme p is in the beginning of pig. It actually gives you lists of words. So I have days 1 through 5 with words to teach the phoneme or P, the sound for P. And I would teach gap, lip, tap, pad, pop, map, pat, hip, pot, tip, kip, lap, pit, dip, and pig. What I like about the IMSE materials is you know that you're getting these word lists in a sequential way. You know that you aren't coming up with words that the kids haven't had because it gives you the list right here and they've done it very deliberately. I have not found on UFLI that exists. So there are word lists that you're like, okay, this teaches me this is lesson 35 or this is lesson 38. But what there are slides that the teachers and interventionists can pull that have those words in them. But you just have to follow the slide. So you don't get any creativity if you want it to be sequential, in my opinion, because you can't, because you have to use the slides in order to be absolutely certain that it's sequential. Or you can use your own brain. But when you do that with intervention, you're going to have, up to 15 kids or whatever that are in different places. So I think it would be really hard to keep up with who's where and then what sounds they've had. So that's step one, is the blending part. Then there is the segmenting, which is the opposite part of that, where the teacher says shin, and then the students all say shin, and then they segment it into sh, mm, right? So the teacher says the word, and then the kids segment it out into its different phonemes. So that is phonemic awareness. UFLI starts with a phonemic awareness drill on day one. So IMSE also starts lesson one of day one with a phonemic awareness thing, but they have this book. It's not very thick, but they have a book of various phonemic awareness activities, and they're broken apart by skill levels 1, 2, and 3. So like easy phonemic awareness, hard phonemic awareness, and medium phonemic awareness. I just earmarked one, and it's basically rhyming and sentence completion. So I like to eat chocolate cake. I don't like hissing like everybody says snake, right? So you're working on rhyming. So what I like about IMSE is it has more of those. It has a whole book's worth. But that's a question you could ask about modifying UFLI. Like, hey, I have a what was I gonna say? Oh, that's going to get boring. Are there other things that you do to work on phonemic awareness? How could you supplement this? And are those research based? Are those evidence based? Like basically, what other PA activities are there that you could do that would be helpful? Okay. Then step 2 in UFLI. Step 1 was phonemic awareness. Step 2 is a visual drill. So what happens is it says the teacher selects a grapheme, and the students, that's a letter or a combination of letters, but it's a card with a letter on it. And the students respond by saying the name of the letter or the letter combination followed by its sound. So they say D says D, SH spells sh. And it says this reinforces the phoneme grapheme correspondences. So on UFLI, this ties into these slides. And so the slides literally just have a letter on them. And then the teacher scrolls through the slides for the day. So you're on lesson 36, you scroll through. But again, what I don't like about that is, if you don't want to do the slides or you want to vary from the slides, then you have to do the work in order to keep it sequential. In IMSE and in other OG programs, what I like is that you get the cards, you get grapheme cards that have letters and, combinations of graphemes on them. And they go in order. So they're numbered on the back, and there's actually additional information on the back. And then you can just keep them sorted out. But the idea is the same. Another thing that I love about IMSE is you get this thing called a phoneme grapheme chart. And the phoneme grapheme chart tracks what sounds different kids do. So you highlight what sounds kids have done. And then eventually when you get into like third grade, and let's say that you say, you hold up the M. So /M/ is the way that you like designate that M is the grapheme. Then the phoneme, M is the phoneme. Then the graphemes, or how you spell it, is M spells MB spells like comb, and MN spells like him. So eventually, once you've learned the entire process, this visual drill of look at it, say what it is, look at it, say what it is, includes all of the different spelling rules for that sound. So they learn the spelling rules and then they do it that way. Now, the way the visual drill is done in IMSE is sometimes with your sand. So you hold up your sand, and for M, I would say, 3 ways to spell this. And the students would divide their thing into 3 different parts, right? And then they would say, as they did it, M spells And so they write an M and then they underline it in the sand. MB spells MN spells So they would write MN in the sand and then they would underline it in their 3 different places so that you get an additional way of multisensory. So a question I would ask there is that just oral? And in IMSE it looks like it is, or in UFLI it looks like it is. Is there a way that we ever write on other media? I don't see other media in UFLI in my let's say I haven't done a deep dive. I've gone into neck deep water in UFLI. And in straight up UFLI, I don't see a place where you write in sand or on gel or whatever. But a big question I always have is, how would your kid do with sand? My kid does terribly with sand. And so we use gel packs and needlepoint paper and sandpaper and, 1,000 different things that feel good on your finger, but are not sand and cannot get thrown in your hair, anybody else's hair, or my carpet. Or the dog. That's really annoying. Okay, so step 2 is this visual drill. Another thing that we do, I forgot something and I'm just going to leave it forgotten because I had out a visual that, never mind. Step 3, auditory drill. So what UFLI then says is that the teacher says a sound, a phoneme, like ah, and the students form the letter or the combination while saying the sound. A says ah, but just on a whiteboard. So they don't use the sand. So the teacher says ah, the students form the letter combination while saying the sound. A says ah. Actually, they say it backwards. Ah is A. It's not backwards. It's just different than the way it's done in IMSE. I don't see any problem with that. But this reinforces the phoneme grapheme. So that is what they call an auditory drill. And then they do a blending drill. So the blending drill on UFLI is done with something that is called a blending board app. Let me show you what a blending board is here on this episode, and then we'll talk about what it looks like electronically. So this is the blending board that comes in your materials with IMSE. And so it's a slat, just a piece of wood with a slat in it, and you hold and then you slide an upright board into it that kind of leans back and it can hold flashcards of sounds. So then as you're going through the beginning of these drills, you put your cards. That's one of the things that's on the back is what position to put the card in at the end. And so it'll tell you if it goes in the beginning, the middle, or the end on the blending board. But basically, what you do is you have a blending board with a bunch of sounds on it. And the middle sound is going to be vowels. And so, they do make it pretty easy for you in the IMSE curriculum because your vowels are yellow, so you can find them pretty quickly. But you go through it, and I'm looking for cards as I'm explaining this. You go through it and you help kids blend the words, and you're looking for nonsense words, and you're also looking for words that are real words. So on my blending board, I have basically index cards that say GAB. So I would take the students with my finger and I would say G, A, B, gab. And then that's a real word. So we would snap or we would clap or we would shout hooray or we would do whatever because that's a real word. Then I only change one letter. So I'm going to take the G away, make that a D. And then we're going to go D, A, B, dab. Another real real word. And so we'll snap or do whatever we do for a real word. Now we do this, like 10 times, 30 times, 150 times, not that long, but I'm abbreviating for you. So now I'm going to change the vowel to an O and we go b, dob. I don't think that's a real word, so we move on. Now we have ask, dosk. So we don't change the same card, but we only do one card at a time. And we're blending. We're practicing blending sounds. And then as it goes on later, that also helps us to practice spelling rules and, various other things. Each one of those cards represents a sound. You will see, for example, that SK was one sound. So in Orton Gillingham, sounds like that go together, whether it's a diphthong or it is a blend or whatever it is. So you go through this blending drill. A big question that I have in UFLI that I always ask is when you do your blending and you don't use a blending board, what do you do when kids are tired of technology? How do you mix that up? And then how do you make sure that that stays within the scope and sequence and that they're only getting sounds that they know? Because if you aren't using the blending board electronically that's hooked up to that lesson, then how do you know that it's sequential? And I think that's like a really important piece to the fidelity of the program. Then you've done that. That's kind of like a warm up. In IMSE, you call that a 3-part drill. So the 3-part drill is the visual, auditory, and blending. Then you get onto the new concept, which you teach. So you go back over to the slides when you're in UFLI and you introduce the new concept. So you discuss the placement and the example of words. Then you use an articulatory gesture. So, A might be hand under the chin. Sometimes is like fingers stretched out because your mouth goes out wide. Oh, sometimes we make a circle around our mouth. And we practice letter formation. So we write the letter and then we read the word and we practice it with word reading, which might be modeling or guided practice. That is not nearly as involved as the teaching of the new concept is in IMSE. In IMSE, it is a 9-part step that then moves on to a 7-part application of the new concept, but it is a good explanation of what happens. But here's where I think stuff might get lost inside UFLI and questions that I think you can ask about it. So now we're going to switch over. I'm going to tell you how a new concept is taught inside IMSE, which will help you to ask questions about how UFLI works. Because I think like the spirit of it is the same, but it's almost, in my opinion, like you have to be trained in IMSE or Orton Academy or Wilson or something in order to be able to do UFLI well. So when you teach a new concept in IMSE, I'm following the guide that's like step by step. This is how explicit this instruction is. It says read alliteration sentences. I stayed inside concept 13, which is our sound is in pig. And I come over to alliterative sentences. I have teaching a new concept and it says introduce on Monday and practice daily. Teacher reads alliteration sentences. Students identify the target sound. So I'm going to read, for example, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. And then the students are going to show where all of those p sounds are. And then I'm going to read Pip placed pears perfectly. And they're going to find where the P is. So I have read my alliteration sentences. Then the students identify students identify the target sound. Okay, sorry. Now, step 2. Teacher shows a new card and informs the students of the letter name. So I hold up a card and it has a P on it and I say, this is P. And then we talk about P for a second. So the first thing is P says P. We use a mirror or we use some visual model of what P looks like. We talk about a few things, whether it is voiced or unvoiced. So we might feel it on our chest or in our throat. to hear if P is voiced or unvoiced? You might not know the answer, so I will tell you. P and hang on. P. No. B. Okay. I got it. So it's bilabial. It's a lip popper. In Lindemann Bell, you would call that a lip popper. I'm also trained in Lindemann Bell lips program. So your lips go together to make the sound, but your voice isn't in it. Hear how my voice isn't in it? Now there is one that is voiced, B. It's B. So P and B are the same sound. One has your voice on, one has your voice off. You just kind of play around with the sound. So we talk about where we make it, and we talk about whether our voice is on or off. Then you're actually supposed to show where it is in the alphabet. So LMNOP. And we talk about whether or not it is a consonant or vowel. Also in IMSE, it recommends that you have some kind of three-dimensional object to use. So whether you bring in like a pig, I don't know. You bring in something that has a lot of P's in the beginning sound or someplace very prevalently in the word. Then there's this brainstorm of like, what are some words that start with P? And you write them on the board. Doesn't have to follow any spelling rules. You know, they can be as weird as you need them to be, like pneumonia. But you start talking about words that start with the beginning letter and the beginning sound. If there is a word that they want to use that starts with, they think starts with P and it doesn't, then you explain it. You're like, oh, that actually sounds like it has P in it, but it doesn't. You know, like Paschetti. It doesn't start with P. It's actually SP, and we're going to talk about that later. That kind of thing. Then, okay, so you write brainstormed words on chart paper, and, you know, you can even do some rhyming around that. That's what it says. Then you teach letter formation. And letter formation obviously is a part of what we just heard about that's it in the UFLI curriculum as well, but inside IMSE, we have this brand of kind of paper called house paper. So we talk about, you know, whether things are in the roof, in the house, or in the basement of the house, and it's lined. And so you can imagine where the roof is, where the house is, and where the basement of the house is. And in IMSE, we do that with needlepoint paper, that like bumpy, holy paper with certain colors, red and green crayons. So we work on the sound. So we would do P says P, P says P, P says P while we're writing and feeling. Then we come back and we do it again with our finger just on that. And the reason it's crayon is because you can feel that even better with your fingers. Then it says that it recommends that you read a book that targets the sound. So, you know, maybe a Peppa Pig book would be good for kindergarten. And then you read a decodable reader that is attached to it. We have not gotten to the decodable reader part of UFLI yet. It doesn't come up until day 2 in the UFLI thing. So we're going to hold on to that. They call it a connected text, but in science of reading, we call it a decodable reader. And then in IMSE, you go back to that phoneme grapheme chart and you mark off, you highlight. You can see this is one I did with a student. So you highlight that you have now learned that sound P on your phoneme grapheme chart, which helps you make some great progress. Okay. So questions that I would ask if my child was in UFLI is, how exactly do you teach a new concept? Do you do it the same way every single way? Is the writing part of the new concept multisensory? How do you make it multisensory? How are you sure that all of these things are sequential, especially if you aren't following the slides? Like, do you follow the slides from UFLI? If not, how are you sure that you're only using sounds as you work through this that the kids have been taught before? If you aren't, how are you making it explicit? Because, you know, are you following this 9-step plan? What is your multi-step plan such that my child can really get used to how it works, etc. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So You're going into the specifics of it, and that's why I want for you to know, because like, I can't it would be impossible to say, "Here's questions to ask," because for every student, it's different, right? Like, I see some of that. A big question that I would have for Jack Barlow is, how's he gonna manage all those materials? What supports can we put in place for him to manage those materials? But I also think, like, it's super important that his instruction is multisensory, and, like, this UFLI doesn't seem nearly as deliberately multisensory as what the IMSE step-by-step says. I think UFLI is intended to be that multisensory, but without a box of materials. So I would want more information about that. Okay, I think we better stop here at the end of day 1. I was planning on getting 1 and 2 done, but I talked for a while, and that's okay because we're really trying to get into the nitty-gritty. So let's take a break here, and let's come back next week and continue on with day 2, where we work on something called a word work map inside UFLI. We learn about UFLI's teaching of sight words, which they call irregular words, and we learn about their connected texts, which are otherwise known as decodable readers. 3 more parts to Orton Gillingham reading instruction. I will see you therefore next week, same time, same place. Have a great week.